Welcome back, and you're still with 180 Degrees. Somaliland is an oasis of peace and an emerging democracy in the troubled Horn of Africa. It is scheduled to host its second democratic presidential elections in early 2009. Now its neighbors, Ethiopia and Djibouti, have troubled border relations with Eritrea, and recently Eritrean and Djiboutian soldiers clashed on their borders. Now, in this respect, Somaliland President Dahir Rayal Kahin made an official visit to Djibouti. This was his first visit to that country since his last visit to the country in January 2005. And now, to shed more light on Somaliland in the Horn of Africa, we are now joined in our studio by Mr. Jamaal Cali Xuseen, and he is the chairperson of the Somaliland Forum, which is an international think tank for Somalilanders in the diaspora. And Mr. Xuseen is also the Chief Executive Officer of Citibank in the Ivory Coast. Mr. Cali Xuseen, it's a very good morning to you and welcome to 180 Degrees.
Thank you.
When we talk about the Horn of Africa, specifically Somalia, we think of it as just one country, Somalia, the troubled Somalia. Now, what exactly is the difference between Somalia and Somaliland?
Yes, you're absolutely correct, because the problem is that when there is a problems happen, that's usually they make the headlines.
Precisely.
But the peaceful part of that part of the world is Somaliland, and as you rightly say, Somaliland is one of the best kept secrets in that part of the world. And the difference between Somaliland and Somalia is they used to be two different countries. They both been colonized by two different countries. Somaliland has been colonized by the British, and Somalia is being colonized by the Italians. Okay. And both of them get their independence in 1960 in different dates. First, Somaliland get the independence in June 26, 1960, and they become a country. It's been, recognized by 34 nations in the United Nations. And then in July 1st, Somalia got independence from Italy. What was happening is there was a dream called a greater Somalia to bring all the people who live in East Africa together. And there were 5 different pieces, including Djibouti, because largely the people who live in Djibouti are Somalis as well. So what happened is they merged, these two countries merged in 1960 and became one. And they took the name Somalia at that point. Then they have a 30-year marriage, but that 30-year marriage collapsed in 1991 when the former dictator of Siad Barre, really bombarded.
But now, is Somaliland recognized by the United Nations?
No, Somaliland is not yet recognized by the United Nations, but the United Nations treats Somaliland differently than the Somalia. And they also have some diplomatic relationships with some countries in Africa and the world. And as you know, the Secretary of State for Africa, Jendai Fraser, went to Somaliland recently. The British Foreign Minister went to Somaliland recently. So Somaliland is treated as a sort of a country, now, but hasn't been recognized.
Yes, officially. But if now Somaliland is this oasis of peace in the Horn of Africa, is it not then overwhelmed by the humanitarian crisis in neighboring Somalia?
That's absolutely correct. What's really happening is the Somaliland success story has been overshadowed by literally the problems that's really happening in Somalia in the south. And I think that because, as you know, when there's a problems, there's a news, there's headlines, so people focus on where there's a problems. But people don't really focus on where there is a peace and where there's a democracy, and try to find out how to really promote that peace.
Now, Djibouti, which is neighboring to Somaliland, as you say, hosts United States and French bases there. Yes. How is the relationship then between Djibouti and Somaliland? Here, I'm following up from the
visit of the president.
The visit of the president.
The Somalia. If you really know this, the people in Somaliland and the people in Djibouti literally have brotherly relationship over the years. And there are people who are originally from Somaliland who are also dual citizenships in Djibouti as well. So that has been, they have a very good relationship. The relationship has not been so good lately But now, from what I see, is the relationships are developing, and the President Riyal Kahim, visiting Djibouti, standing by the people of Djibouti, and saying that we support the people of Djibouti, in their clashes with Eritrea.
And what about the relations between Somaliland and Ethiopia? Because we know that Ethiopia has got troops in Somalia, hasn't it?
Yes, Ethiopia has troops in Somalia, but Ethiopia doesn't have any troops in Somaliland because Somaliland is a peaceful nation. But Somaliland and Ethiopia had wonderful relationship in the past, and they continue to have a relationship. In fact, they have some, mission offices that are based in Hargeisa, which, there is a sort of de facto ambassador who are staying in Hargeisa. They have a good relationship from that perspective.
And how do you see then the future of Somaliland? Could it be a stabilizing factor in the Horn of Africa?
It is, and I think, the problem is the world have tried to create a peace in Somalia. And this is probably the 12th conferences that has been held outside of the country to bring all the people in the South Somalis together. And all the people who were brokering those negotiations were people who are not Somalis, people who are, foreigners, either in the region or outside of the region. I think what it is if people recognize Somaliland and empower them and make them a nation, I think they will play a key role of creating a peace in the Somali side as well.
And what efforts are being done by you as Somalilanders to ensure that you get UN recognition and the rest of the African continent recognize you and the efforts you are trying to make in the Horn of Africa?
No, we continue to do our efforts almost on a daily basis. All the people in the diaspora, in Somalilanders who live outside of the world, who live in Europe, in Africa, and America, every day are trying to knock everyone's door to create an attention to the world on Somaliland situation and to bring the attention, because as you know, the attention now is focused on the Somalia side where there's a problem, where there's a crisis. But what we are saying is, hey, here there's a peaceful country, here's a country that has a democracy, that have changed 3 presidents, democratically elected. And if the world doesn't give recognition, at some point, there might be some even problems happen over there.
Well, Mr. Ali Xuseen, thank you so much for joining us, but we have to end it there.
Thank you.
That was Mr.